Yeah.
So, for me, when I was 16, I had a brother that blasted into my life. I grew up an only child in an abusive household in a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
So for me, the world was pretty bleak, dark, and I feared pretty much everyone in the world. And then at the age of 16, I have this brother that blasts into my life. Now, he did blast in when I was 7, 9 years before, and blasted right out days later.
Okay.
And I didn't hear from him again for 9 years. And then he shows up at my door, and I'm 16. I'm like, yo, what happened to you?
Right.
And then he told me the whole thing. He had it out with my father, and that doesn't surprise me because pretty much everyone had it out with my father back then. So he couldn't do it with my father, so he dropped out.
Yeah.
So he comes into my life, and what he did for me was he exposed me to so much. He opened up such a world for me. Turns out I had many more relatives. I came from a very large family. I had no idea. It's like my parents kept me away from them. And I discovered why, because there was some deep, dark secret that they didn't want me to know. So they kind of exiled me in Brooklyn, while a lot of my family, other relatives, were uptown Manhattan and in the Bronx. And then my brother's like introducing me. It's just a whole other world, man.
Yeah.
And he's a lot older than me. He's 37.
Yeah.
Right? I'm 16. He's 37. So he's old enough and has experienced enough that he's providing a level of guidance, of mentoring, and he's my actual brother. And at least as I experienced him, he was an incredibly generous and giving individual. Like, he really gave a damn about me. And he stood for me and fought for me. And for me to have that, it was like, whoa, he was the one ray of light in a world where it seemed like it was just filled with darkness.
Yeah.
So of course, when he died a year later, I took it really, really, really hard.
Wow.
Like, really hard. And his death came completely unexpected.
Yeah.
So he was in the hospital with pneumonia, but he was previously hospitalized maybe a couple of weeks before. They said he had a recurrence. So I was like, all right. So we get on the phone, and that conversation about me coming to see him, he wanted me to bring him a pack of cigarettes. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a health freak, and I always have been. So I said, look, man, you got a respiratory condition. You're in the hospital. No, I am not bringing you a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
So we fought about it. That fight was our one and only fight. We had settled on that I would go see him that Thursday, right? He died the day before.
Wow.
So that was our last conversation.
Yeah.
So we had this incredible relationship for a year.
Yeah.
We get into our one and only fight. I figured, whatever, we'll just make it right when we see each other. He died the day before.
Wow.
So I carried that guilt. That guilt and shame defined the 90s for me, because that happened in 1990. And it really, every year as September 17th was approaching, it was easy to remember because it was my sister's birthday. He died on my sister's birthday. So every year as that date was approaching, it was like this annual depression ritual.
Yeah.
Because here was this man who shows up, gives me this incredible ray of light. Yeah. And I'm going to quote John Leguizamo here, where he said, when we don't see ourselves outside of ourselves, we're fucking invisible. And he's guiding me, leading me, sharing with me. We have this great relationship. And then he's gone. And then the way that he left, completely unexpected, and our last conversation happened to be our one and only fight.
Yeah.
So every year, man, I was just going through it. And it's not as if the rest of the year was much better, because then every year the depression ritual was going to his grave and just puking out all the crap of my life on his tombstone. That was effectively it. So there was one thing that happened, though, in 1999. I'm having this conversation. The date is approaching. So I'm in that annual depressed state, right, in September. And this is before 9/11, obviously. So I'm having a conversation with someone, and the person just says the simplest thing to me, man. This person says, why don't you finally give a dying man his last wish? I was like, well, what? Like, I had to really step back, because there was something about it that really hit me and resonated very deeply. But then, of course, the heady side of me was like, began doubting it immediately. Like, can it really be that simple? But it is oftentimes. So much of life really is that simple. It, may not be easy,
right,
but it is simple. And so the notion of it resonated with me. And then I came up with the idea of, you know what, this time around, I'm going to go to his grave.
Mm-hmm.
But this time around, I'm going to bring that pack of cigarettes.
I knew it. So,
You knew where this was going, right?
yeah.
And I'm going to smoke some. So here I am at a grocery store. I'm in a bodega in the Bronx, and I'm waiting online to buy a pack of cigarettes, which I never in my life thought I would do.
Yeah.
Even to this day.
Yeah.
And so I get the pack of cigarettes. I get to the cemetery late. So I had to like climb over a wall and a gate that was over the wall. But I was determined. I was like, the hell with this. It always took me a while to find his tombstone. And when I did, this time it was radically different. This time I fell to my knees, and it was just like an unloading was finally going to occur, because I knew this was going to be my final goodbye.
Yeah.
So then I put my hand on his tombstone, and was just like, it was a release.
Yeah.
And then I pulled out the cigarettes. I smoked half the pack. And it was like, for me, smoking with him.
Yeah.
And then I left the remaining half in the pack, and I slipped it behind his tombstone, put my hand on his tombstone. I gave my final goodbye. That was 1999. I never felt the need to go back.